The taxi rolled to a stop outside the towering brick gates of Lincoln University. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, leaving a dim orange glow on the horizon. I grabbed my backpack, the weight of anticipation heavier than the bag itself. First day at an American college finally, but the air felt thick, almost wrong. The line at the admission office stretched longer than I expected. Students chatted nervously, clutching forms and IDs, but I felt oddly alone. As I shuffled forward, I noticed a tall guy standing a few steps away, staring at me with an unsettling intensity. He smiled briefly when our eyes met, but there was something off. The kind of smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. Inside the office, the fluorescent lights flickered once. I brushed it off, but a chill ran down my spine. The staff handed me my ID card, dorm key, and a campus map, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching. Outside, the campus seemed quiet for this hour, almost too quiet. Students were moving in small groups, yet shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally, twisting along the paths. I thought it was just nerves until I heard a soft whisper behind me. Finally, I spun around, no one, just the evening wind rustling through the trees. I shrugged and headed toward the dorm, telling myself it was just my imagination. But as I walked down the path, the tall guy from earlier appeared on the other side, walking in the same direction. He didn't speak, didn't break pace, just watched. By the time I reached the dorm, the sun had fully disappeared. The building was old, Gothic in style, with long shadows cast by the street lamps. My dorm room was on the 3rd floor. The elevator creaked as it climbed, and I felt a sense of unease settling over me. Room 312. I unlocked it, set my bag down, and tried to shake the uneasy feeling. But then I noticed something strange. My roommate's bed was made neatly, though I hadn't met him yet. A note lay on the pillow. Don't trust the shadows. I froze, my hands shook. The note had no signature. From the hallway, I thought I heard faint footsteps retreating, slow, deliberate. I told myself it was just another student, maybe an upperclassman settling in. But I couldn't help but glance at the shadowed hallway, feeling eyes on me. Morning came faster than I expected. The sunlight streaming through the dorm window didn't feel warm. It felt harsh, almost intrusive. I quickly packed my bag and headed to the student center for the orientation. The campus was buzzing with activity. Freshmen moved in groups, chattering nervously about classes and roommates. A few upperclassmen were giving tours, pointing out lecture halls, libraries, and cafeterias. Everything seemed normal, almost too normal. During the orientation, the dean spoke about the importance of community, safety, and respect. But as I scanned the crowd, I noticed subtle things. A girl sitting alone kept glancing toward the back door, her expression tense. A guy in a black hoodie leaned against the wall, staring at the ceiling like he was listening to something no one else could hear. After the speeches, we were divided into smaller groups to tour the dorms and facilities. I stuck with my group, but my mind wandered. I couldn't stop thinking about room 312 and the note. Don't trust the shadows. The guide led us to the dorm building. She opened the front door and a chill hit me instantly. The air inside felt heavier than outside, like the walls were breathing. The hallway was dim despite the overhead lights. "This is where most freshmen stay," she said cheerfully. But her voice sounded distant, echoing unnaturally. We walked past rooms with names and numbers on the doors. Some rooms had students already unpacking. I kept my head down, trying not to notice the eyes peeking from behind slightly open doors. When we reached room 312, I froze. The door was slightly ajar, though I had locked it last night. My heart raced. I pushed the door open cautiously. Everything looked untouched except the note was gone. I stepped in, listening, nothing. Then I noticed my laptop was on the floor, screen cracked as if it had been thrown. My stomach dropped. I hadn't left it there in that position. From the hallway, I thought I heard soft laughter. Not human laughter, something distorted like a mix of whispers and echoes. I turned, but the hallway was empty. I decided to ignore it, but that night when I tried to sleep, the whispers returned, faint, coming from the hallway outside my door. Every time I opened my eyes, I saw shadows stretching along the walls in ways that didn't make sense. By the 3rd hour of sleep, I felt a presence sitting at the edge of my bed. I didn't move. My eyes were wide open. A voice whispered, "You shouldn't be here alone." I jumped up. The room was empty, but the feeling of being watched lingered. The next few days at Lincoln University were a blur of lectures, cafeteria lines, and library visits. On the surface, Everything seemed normal. But beneath that normalcy, something was off. I started noticing patterns, small, almost insignificant things that gnawed at my mind. In the library, the tall guy from the admission line appeared again. He never spoke, just stood between the aisles, watching me from a distance. Whenever I moved, he moved too, always keeping his gaze on me. Late at night, I began hearing knocks on my dorm door, soft, hesitant. Each time I opened, no one was there. I tried telling myself it was just pranks from other students, but deep down I knew it was something else. One evening, while returning from the cafeteria, I found a book lying in the middle of the hallway. It was open to a page that simply read, "Look behind you." I spun around. The hallway was empty, the fluorescent lights flickering. A cold breeze brushed past me, even though the windows were closed. My heart raced and I started walking faster, every instinct screaming to run. In class, I began noticing students whispering when I passed. Not the usual chatter, there was a tension, almost fear in their eyes. Some avoided looking at me altogether, as if acknowledging me would summon danger. My roommate, whom I had not met properly, remained absent. Notices were posted about missing students, but they were quickly removed from the bulletin board. Rumors circulated in hushed tones. Disappearances, strange accidents, unexplained shadows. One night, I woke to a tapping sound coming from my window. When I looked outside, the campus was deserted, but a figure stood at the far end of the quad, tall still, watching. I blinked, it was gone. Paranoia started creeping in. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw shadows moving unnaturally. Hallways that once seemed empty now looked alive, stretching and bending in impossible ways. Even my reflection in the mirror sometimes lagged a fraction behind my movements. The whispers grew louder. Sometimes I caught words. "You shouldn't have come. Leave now." But whenever I ran to tell someone, the voices vanished, leaving only silence. And then the first real incident happened. I was walking back from the library when the lights flickered violently. The hallway plunged into darkness. I heard footsteps, rapid, frantic, coming from behind. I turned, heart pounding, but no one was there. Then my dorm key dropped to the floor with a clatter. I bent down to pick it up, and when I looked up, the tall figure was standing at the far end of the corridor, grinning. I ran. Never had I run so fast. The dorm lobby was empty. The front doors were locked, but I swore I saw shadows moving along the glass, trying to reach in. That night, sleep was impossible. I realized something terrifying. This wasn't random. Whatever was stalking me was intelligent, patient, and waiting. The next few nights were the worst. Every sound seemed amplified. Footsteps echoing in empty corridors, whispers curling around corners, and the faint scrape of metal against tile. Sleep became a distant memory. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, the tall figure. Always watching, always waiting. One night I returned to my dorm to find my room door wide open. The key was on the floor, scratched and bent. My bed was flipped over, books scattered everywhere. And there, written on the wall in red marker, "You can't hide." I froze, my hands shook. I wanted to run, but the hallway outside was dark, swallowing all light. And then I heard it, footsteps approaching. Not one, but many, slow and deliberate. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I turned toward the nearest exit, only to see the tall figure standing at the far end, grinning. I ran blindly through the dorm, crashing into doors, tumbling downstairs, until I finally reached the lobby. The lights flickered violently, then went out completely. In the pitch black, I heard whispers forming words. "Join us or leave forever." I stumbled outside into the night. The campus quad, once familiar, was now a maze of shifting shadows. Trees twisted unnaturally, and the buildings seemed to loom over me like silent predators. In the distance, the figure stood under a street lamp. He raised his hand, pointing directly at me. Panic surged. I ran toward the library, hoping for safety, but the doors slammed shut before I could reach them. Every exit I tried led to another dark hallway, another impossible corridor. It was as if the campus itself had become a trap. Back in my dorm, I found my laptop on the floor again. The screen was on, displaying a video feed of my own room. I watched in horror as my reflection moved differently from me smiling when I wasn't. Gesturing toward the shadows, sleep-deprived and terrified, I decided to confront whatever was happening. I started exploring the less traveled parts of the campus. the abandoned basement under the science building, the locked-off attic of the library, the maintenance tunnels that weren't on any map. Everywhere I went, I felt eyes following me, shadows stretching and twisting around corners. One night I saw something impossible. A group of figures, faceless and silent, moving through the quad. They were dressed like students but glided without making a sound. I backed away slowly, only to feel a cold hand brush my shoulder. I turned, no one was there. And then came the message carved into the dorm door. "You are next." I realized something chilling. Whatever was stalking me wasn't just a person. It was something much older, something that fed on fear, lurking in the shadows of the campus. And it had chosen me. The night was colder than usual, and an unnatural fog had settled over the campus. I had no idea how many days had passed in fear and exhaustion. Every corridor, every shadow, every whisper felt alive, waiting for me to make a mistake. I knew I couldn't run anymore. I had to face it. I grabbed a flashlight, my phone, and whatever courage I could muster, and ventured into the old science building basement, the place that felt the most unnatural, the epicenter of everything terrifying that had happened. The basement smelled of damp metal and decay. My flashlight flickered. Shadows twisted along the walls, forming shapes I couldn't name. Then I saw him, the tall figure, standing perfectly still in the middle of the room, surrounded by faceless silhouettes. They didn't move, but the air around them vibrated with intent. "You shouldn't be here," the figure whispered, voice echoing as if from everywhere and nowhere. "You can't leave." My heart raced, but I remembered the note from the first night. "Don't trust the shadows." I realized then that fear was their weapon. If I let it consume me, I would be trapped forever. I shined the flashlight directly at him. The shadows recoiled as if the light burned them. The figure screamed a sound that wasn't human, a mixture of anguish and rage. The faceless silhouettes dissolved into mist. I ran up the stairs, the building groaning and shaking behind me. I didn't look back. Every step felt like a battle, but I made it outside into the foggy quad. The first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, cutting through the mist like a promise of safety. Exhausted and trembling, I reached the main gate. Students were already moving to class, oblivious to what had unfolded overnight. The tall figure was nowhere to be seen. I couldn't tell if it had vanished or if I had finally broken free. As I glanced back one last time at the dorms, my phone buzzed. A message appeared on the screen from an unknown number. "This isn't over. You will return." I knew then that some horrors can't be erased. They wait in the corners, in the shadows of places that seem safe, patient, and eternal. And though I had survived, I would never forget my first night at American College.